All right, folks, it's time for World Politics. I've got one of the founders of the network with me, along with Rick Rosner. We'll see if others pop in as well. But there are a number of things that are taking place in the political lanes and around the politics, not just here, but around the world as well. So it looks like the White House and the Senate have negotiated a deal that might be getting some money to Ukraine, as well as getting some money to Israel and other U.S. allies as well. And it looks like some of the Democrats, and actually Kim Calhoun, who is one of the founders that I was referring to, might be interested to hear this because apparently some of the Texas Democrats that are pushing back about the Republican efforts to revive Trump era border policies. So the Senate is hashing out the terms of that aid package that I was talking about, and definitely the money looks like it's going to be coming and all along those lines. And Republicans are demanding more on the border than the White House initially offered. And many Latino Democrats are concerned that the White House is entertaining stricter measures. Representative Joaquin Castro, a Democrat from San Antonio, said at a news conference with other Hispanic lawmakers on yesterday, we should be able to pass that funding without sacrificing the lives of desperate asylum seekers. They will still say that the Democrats are for open borders. They will continue to lie, and yet you will have sacrificed the safety and the future of millions. So, like I said, this whole notion of what to do with the migrants is a important issue both here in the United States, but there has been migrant conversations in other parts of the world, including some of the European nations as well. As a matter of fact, I believe that in the UK, they are sending some migrants back to their area of Rwanda. So definitely the migrant conversation is a conversation that a lot of people are thinking about and talking about as well. And just lastly, but not leastly, there were 7 arrested in Germany and 2 countries that when I think of them, I usually think of them as being neutral, that being Denmark and the Netherlands over a suspected terrorism plot. So 7 people, including 4 suspected Hamas members, were arrested in Denmark, Germany, and the Netherlands on suspicion of planning attacks on Jewish institutions in Europe, according to authorities in the 3 countries on this particular day, this day being Thursday, the 14th. The arrests were made as Israel pressed on with its operations to destroy Hamas in the Gaza Strip, a war that was touched off by a cross-border October 7th assault on Israeli towns by militants of the Palestinian Islamist movement. So definitely that is something we are seeing, and definitely a lot of back and forth going in that space. But 3 of the suspects were detained in Berlin, and another was detained in the Netherlands. All 4 longstanding members of Hamas with close links to the leadership of Hamas military branch, according to what German prosecutors have said in their statement. And of course, a Hamas official denied those held were connected to their group. 3 people arrested in Denmark would be charged under the terrorism clause of the criminal code and put in front of a judge for preliminary questioning. And it was not clear if there was any link between the arrest in Denmark and those in Germany and the Netherlands. So that is something that we are seeing going on as well. So definitely a lot's taking place in these political landscapes, and I'm sure that folks will have some interesting thoughts about these issues and all along those lines. I did say last but not least, what I was going to mention one other thing to maybe be part of what we talk about, because I know Rick Rosner, as he's here and he is here with us today, oftentimes talks about AI, and Pope Francis has weighed in on the AI conversation as well, because he's calling for a treaty to regulate artificial intelligence. And speaking of what can go on and the different types of government that there are, Pope Francis has warned that AI exploited by technocratic systems could pose a risk to our survival. So I guess he's one of those folks that is worried that AI literally could take over and that could be problematic. And for that reason, he is proposing a global AI treaty. We do know that those treaties don't always work and all in that space. I'm going to bring some folks in, and I do have Sasha Starr with me. And like I said, the founder of the network, Kim Calhoun, and also Rick Rosner, and all in that space. But definitely just wondering what folks think about some of those things that I brought up and all along those lines. But I'll start with you, Rick, because AI would be interested, and apparently we're going to try to get a global treaty. I don't know that
Well,
they can.
I think this Pope is a cool guy, and that a Pope in his mid 80s is worried about AI shows he's kind of on top of things. I want to go back to your previous story about the European Hamas terrorists. I don't love that. My wife and I are going to England next month, and I'm Jewish. I look Jewish, and when it makes me a little nervous, when people are looking to attack Jews.
It makes a lot of sense. Everything, Sasha. I don't know if you heard anything about this, but I did mention the fact that apparently Hamas militants have been arrested over there in Europe, including in two countries that I consider to be neutral, that being Denmark and the Netherlands. They've only arrested about 7 folks and all in that space. And as I was telling Kim earlier, I actually saw a commercial that was geared toward what you have said quite often, which was a commercial that was asking the Palestinians to kick Hamas out of that. So it was actually a pro-Palestinian commercial, but it was asking the Palestinians to get rid of Hamas, is the PSA and commercials that I heard and all along those lines. But any thoughts that you've got about these stories, Sasha? And then I did see your hand, Rick.
Everything is very simple. Behind everything is Russia. Russia wants to destabilize the Western world, Western Europe, United States. So everything what bring instability is definitely Russia's play in that respect. And until there will be conditions where Russia will be stopped by Ukraine, because except Ukraine, there is no one to stop Russia. Just as simple as that. The other countries either cannot fight Russia or not willing to fight Russia or would avoid fighting Russia. Ukraine is there, and that's the only hope that Russia will be stopped by Ukrainians. It's very simple.
Rick, you had something that you wanted to add? Go ahead.
Yeah, you might remember the end of the last episode of The Sopranos when Tony's sitting with his family eating French fries, and then something happens right at the end. He wasn't sitting mafia style. When I go into a place, whether it's public transit or a restaurant, I sit mafia style, where you put your back to the wall, you can see the whole place, you know what your exits are, where your exits are, and you have an exit plan. I always think about, what would I do if somebody walked in here and started shooting? Is there a window I can throw a chair through and I can drag my wife through the window? You think about that stuff.
No, but Rick, along those
it's
same lines,
interesting you think about that, because I do too. And I met Senator Thom Tillis one morning for breakfast, and it was in this big, beautiful conference room in downtown area, and the whole conference room was all glass, so kind of a square looking out everywhere. It was all windows, and it was so funny because I decided not to take the head of the table just because it was the senator. So so I took the middle of the table, and he comes walking in, walks around the table and sits down right next to me. And I'm like, that's weird. And so I asked him, I said, why are you not taking the head of the table? And he goes, well, if there's a shooter out there, that's where they aim. Yep. And I'm like, I'm starting to, so I, after that, started to take the senator's way of sitting in a room and not taking the head of the table, because he said a lot of times they won't even look to see who it is. They just know that the head will be sitting at the head of the table. And I'm like, that's a good point. I never thought of that. So
see, I was pointing at everything, but Sasha and Rick and even you, Kim, and everything. I guess my question, and like I said, fortunately or unfortunately, I've not dealt with those kind of individuals, meaning those that are in the underworld, even though I got some friends that might be a little bit less than savory and all in that space. But that being said, it seems to me that as I recall and thinking about even the Valentine's Day massacre, Sasha, that if you are in a building and the people are coming with guns ablazing, doesn't matter where you're sitting, you're pretty much going to be toast and everything. Because the Valentine's Day massacre, they were toast when the people came in blazing, as I recall it, historically and everything. So maybe you are having the same mindset that they are having, that you are going to sit with your back to the wall. But if they're coming in front and guns blazing, I think you're pretty much toast. But I could be wrong. What is your thoughts?
Look at the Scorsese movie Goodfellas. Like most of the people in that movie got killed, but they all walked into ambushes. Mm-hmm. Joe Pesci, he thought he was going to be a made man. They walk him into the garage and he sees, oh, there's a tarp down. He's like, oh no. And then he's gone. And it's like, you need to be proactive. All these guys are killing each other. You know, the smarter guys, you know, figured out that what was happening and kind of skedaddled to some extent, or they were lucky enough to get arrested by the feds and be in protective custody. But
yeah, I hear what you're saying and everything. But it's come back to the political nature of world politics and everything. Kim, earlier we were talking about, and I know even Sasha's brought it up before and everything, this notion of the money, because apparently there's a lot of money that is going to be coming out to Ukraine and to Israel and to other allies. And like I mentioned at the beginning, there are some folks that feel that the money could be more useful for programs that are here in the United States that need help, whether that is housing, whether that is other infrastructure kind of issues, and all along those lines. So what is folks' answers to those folks that are wondering about the money going out when they feel that the money could be more useful inside? Because a lot of people are even not worried necessarily about the people coming across the border because one, they're coming for jobs that they might not want to do themselves, and two, they've got other more pressing concerns in their own lives and everything. But I just want to y'all's take, because that is one of the political arguments I hear, is that why are we giving money to people overseas when we've got issues here in the West?
So, I mean,
we haven't given any more money recently that I'm aware of, but we just passed 2/3 of the Senate. You know, Sasha might be interested in this as well. 2/3 of the Senate today passed $881 billion approved for military spending. So what does that really mean, right? And so they went in, and I'm sure that there's a lot of fat mixed in there. And Lockheed Martin, of course, is sitting right there waiting to pounce because they're one of the big contractors. And so this is big news for the contractors, but they have to pass this spending bill every year anyway. But there was some allocations for the Ukraine and the war aspects. Now they have done a survey. Of course, we all say, you know, what are surveys, right? But majority of the Americans, they're tired of their money being spent towards the wars. But here's my take on this. Right now, it's becoming, as we've noticed today, with the 4 terrorists that were arrested in neutral countries, as Mark informed me. We need to kind of put a lid on some of this. Military spending should be used to start controlling this, and maybe saying, okay, Russia, what is it going to take for you to cease fire? Let's negotiate this. Let's negotiate some peace in the world, and then sit down with Israel and say, what is it going to take to reel this in and make you feel comfortable? Because right now, you know, you're still angry, and you're still and have every right to be, but what is it going to take to make people starting to feel comfortable again? Because my concern now is traveling outside of the United States after what has just happened, because in the past we have seen it become very dangerous when you have terrorists now going into neutral areas. And this was Hamas, according to the reports. Now, it's very early into the arrest, but with $881 billion being allocated for military spending, I would like to see a spreadsheet of where it's actually going to be spent, and not just being pocketed into some people's, you know, big pocketbook. so that they can get a big fat vacation this year. I think we need to make sure that they show us that there's some accountability for this money. Yes, Rick.
Yeah, Rick.
So, what first thing? Israel's not going to stop doing what it's doing, which is going into Gaza and just taking it over, because that's something that they can do fairly quickly. And yeah, the world is pissed at them over some of the the civilian casualties, but they'll be done taking over Gaza within a month or two, and then everybody can calm down. Now with the military spending, 90%, I've heard this a million times now, of the money allocated to Ukraine goes to American arms manufacturers. To do the show I do at night, Naked at Night with Lance, I drive to Lance's, which means driving 35 miles across Los Angeles into the part of Los Angeles that was blighted, that's been blighted because auto manufacturing, aviation, weapons in Torrance and nearby communities, all those companies left when we geared down from the Vietnam War, when people started buying more foreign cars, and it's weapons spending could bring some of that back. With World War II brought us back from the Depression, and it's a sad deal that spending a ton on military stuff helps the economy. I'd also like Mark said, I talk a lot about AI. When the Cold War ended and the Soviet Union fell, we got a peace dividend. We didn't have to spend as much. And with AI, I'm hoping we don't have to spend as much, because AI will make our systems more efficient. And we can, fly drones that cost, a couple million instead of fighter planes that cost $500 million.
Yeah, Sasha.
I think it's a great misconception that American people believe that there would be no or very little help to Ukraine. Somehow this money will be trickled down to American taxpayers one way or another, so they will have either more cash or more goods, or maybe real estate will become cheaper and more affordable, or so on. That's not the case at all. This money is not going to Ukraine, first of all. It's only 10% of the money going to Ukraine. 90%, as Rick says, stays with U.S. weapons manufacturers. Furthermore, if budget for next year was approved, almost $900 billion, let's, because we don't have spreadsheet, as Kim suggested, where is the money actually going. All I know is to defend against Canada and Mexico requires maybe $50 million, maybe even less, provided that this country don't even have desire to attack the United States for next probably 755 years, unless, for example, Mexico could attack the United States in half an hour to resign and ask U.S. take over Mexico. That's the only way how Mexico and why would attack the United States. So really the situation is that if Ukraine somehow one day will fall, that is spelling so huge disaster for the West, including the United States, that people who are fighting to save this money going to Ukraine and don't help them or so on, they will pay way much more in the near future when Russia will start marching to Baltic republics, Poland, and then Germany. And now US, if they will oblige to the Article 5 of NATO, they will have to bring their foots on the ground. And American soldiers will actually have to start fighting in Europe. And this, I don't think it's very desirable outcome. But that's what really is the alternative of letting Ukraine fall and somehow lose. But it's not going to happen. Ukrainians are not going to go for it. They will fight Russians everywhere. And obviously, like you may say that every war has to finish one day or another. We see this war is so peculiar is that with Putin, first of all, he's a liar. He's a pathological liar, and you cannot make any peace agreement. So that's why Zelensky, he made it a law. It's Ukrainian law, no negotiations with Putin. So as long as Putin is in power in Russia, there will be no negotiations of any kind with Putin. Now, once Putin will be out of power, it depends who is in power, so on. The situation may change, but not while Putin is at power, because his plan is to absorb all Ukraine, and if not, then make some kind of a peace that he will violate in the next few months anyway, and that will make him free to attack Baltic states and Poland and other European countries. So there is no way that you can say, okay, what do you want, Mr. Putin? Okay, you want a third of Ukraine, maybe half of Ukraine, or you may have, you want to have half of Poland, or maybe a little bit of Germany, and half of Alaska. Okay, we'll give it all to you, just leave us alone. It's not going to work. So you have to fight. And Israel would love to have a peace, of course, but if it's surrounded by states which have nothing else but complete destruction of Israel and killing all the Jews there, how you can make peace with these people? Second state or two-state solution, and all that other wonderful things. You tell me.
Well, I you know what? Unless we have a crystal ball, we really can't predict what's going to happen. But the way I see it, Putin wants Ukraine and Israel wants Gaza. And I guess they will both eventually get what they want, maybe not what any one person deserves. And I don't think anyone deserves the pain and suffering that the civilians are being made to have to deal with. And unfortunately, that's what war becomes, is not about the people who want the war or want what they want, but it's about truly about, unfortunately, the people and their pain and suffering and their losses. As I always say, war is a bunch of young men who don't know each other, who don't hate each other, who really have never spoken with each other, but yet are made to kill each other by a bunch of old men who know each other, hate each other, have nothing nice to say to each other, but refuse to kill each other because they will make the young men do it for them. So, I mean, it's sad that our world and society, as old as we think we are and smart as we think we are, still have to stoop to such horrific ways of dealing with matters. And I still don't understand why Russia is going after Ukraine, or why Israel has always wanted Gaza. And then, I don't understand. I don't think I ever will. Maybe we should turn everything over to artificial intelligence to control us. It, maybe can make a better life for us, or a better quality of life.
Kim,
I
what,
don't know.
I'm curious about the $841 billion.
But Kim, what makes you think that Israel always wanted Gaza? Gaza is not wanted by anybody in the world, not by any Arab countries, not Egypt, by nobody, including Israel. Nobody wants that piece of land. All Israel wants to secure that there will be no more attacks against Israel, similar to October 7th. That's all what Israel cares.
So, Toby, you had a point you want to make, and I don't know if you're going to jump into the AI conversation, but in case you missed it before you got on, the Pope has proposed a treaty around AI regulation. So that was part of the AI conversation in politics, because he thinks that we need to have better regulations worldwide on AI. So that was part of the conversation. But you may be also responding to this, Sasha.
Yeah, I just want to put just to tie into The Ukraine issue is one thing that we definitely have to keep fighting for Ukraine and keep working to bring an end to that war. That one will end, and at some point it will. There have been reports that Russia's military is down 80% based on just this war because of the fighting back and forth. I don't know if those reports are true or not, but either way, Ukraine has to be sustained. It has to be there, and we have to, because it is a Democrat. I mean, it's it is that first domino to fall based on what's going on with Guyana and Venezuela, and then the other, the Baltic states would be next. There are particular areas like Taiwan and China. What's going on in Ukraine has a lot of geopolitical strings tied to it. I think if Ukraine falls, that's going to cause a domino effect. But again, that's why Ukraine has to be there, and we still have to continue to fight with Ukraine. The issue that I think, I'll disagree with Sasha on this, but I'll also agree with Kim on this. The war in Israel, with Israel and Gaza, the reason that Egypt and other Arab nations aren't taking in a lot of the people of Palestine or the people of Gaza, and it's been reported, the Egyptian prime minister and the foreign minister have said, it's not the fact. Well, yes, partially it has to do with what's tied into the individuals that come into the nation, but that's only a small piece. The other piece is the fact of the histrionics behind that whole war that's been there. The displacement of the actual Palestinian people and the people of Gaza, because the fear from, and this was from the foreign minister of Egypt, the reason why they didn't want to take them in is because they fear that they would not be able to return to the place that they had just left. So therefore, it's basically, they feel that part of the history of the land grab that's there from the Israeli people or from the Israeli government. However, again, Israel has to have the ability to defend itself, and the people of Palestine, or the Palestinians and the people of Gaza, have to be able to live. Hamas is a terrorist organization, and we can all agree on that, but we have to be able to separate the two. Of the people of Palestine are not Hamas. Hamas is an actual organization. And as you hear, I got somebody in the background. But the other big thing that I wanted to touch on is that the tough part about the war in Israel ending is because the political strife that Netanyahu is under, and the idea that the longer this war goes on, the more he's able to hold on to power, because he's going to face retribution for what happened on October 7th and his failings, because the Israeli people were already upset at Netanyahu. But as soon as this war ends, that's something that he has to face. So my concern, as well as, I've heard from many others, is that what exactly, because the negotiations, what you talked about, Kim, is what we should be focused on. The UN is wanting to call a ceasefire. Everybody wants to get the hostages out, but it seems like Netanyahu is tone deaf to that, and he seems to be focused on just the actual war, and he keeps bringing up Hamas and trying to play on the emotions. Is Netanyahu stringing this war out? And that's my concern with Netanyahu right now, is he stringing things along because he doesn't want to face the retribution and that political trouble that he's in. He was in before October 7th, and he's really in hot water because of October 7th.
Okay,
I agree with you on that.
clarify a couple of things.
All right, go ahead,
If you
Sasha.
remember, after Yom Kippur War of 1973, there was a peace treaty signed between Egypt and Israel, and between Jordan and Israel. And for 50 years, and still going on, there are no wars between Israel and Egypt and Israel and the Jordan. Now, Israel was begging Egypt to take over not people from Gaza to Egypt, take over all Gaza, so people, Palestinians, could remain in Gaza. So Egypt would provide administration or just anything, whatever they need to provide, so the Gaza would not be any longer a hostile entity to Israel. Well, that didn't happen. Why Egypt didn't want to take over Gaza? There are different versions. I don't subscribe to any of those. It's just one opinion is that Palestinians are not a regular Arab people who wants to build something and prosper or so on. They are focused on destruction of Israel, and that's only their goal in life, with help of Hamas or without Hamas or somehow one way or another, to have a destruction of Israel. That's their goal. This is why it's so difficult issue, and it's so difficult to imagine two-state solution or any other things before they would recognize Israel. Now, if they wanted really to end this war, it could be done easily by releasing all remaining hostages. The fear is that there are not too many hostages to be released. I think most of them are dead already. But however, whoever is alive, just release them, recognize Israel's right to exist, and that's the end of war. No more suffering, no more bombing, and so on. That's
I'm going on PBS. I'm going to be speaking about Israel tomorrow on PBS, so I've got to do my review about the historical part of the war. And so this is good warm-up practice for me. But I tell you, I think at the end of the day, there is going to be significant ripple effects in terms of the presidential race, in terms of, Muslim American voters in the swing states, how this is kind of turning against Biden. We're seeing this in Raleigh, actually, in Morrisville and Cary. I put up just a few days ago a Hanukkah post just to wish Jewish friends on my Facebook site, and was attacked relentlessly all day with requests to take it down, and even got a call to resign. People coming in and it's just pins and needles. I mean, and it's I think going to be interesting to see how this affects Trump, how this affects Biden. I think a call for a ceasefire is really what people are asking for. They just want President Biden, and the United States of America has actually fought against the UN resolution asking for that. So I agree. Sasha Starr has made some great points. I think at the end,
but Steve, to your point, and all along those lines, and I don't know your attitudes or beliefs in this, but I do know that even other cities, including here in Durham, but even some of the East Coast cities, that there is this notion of, if you're going to give a salute to one holiday, that you have to give it to all holidays. Because I remember, I think it was even here in Durham, that they had a symbol, right, and it was a symbol of the like the Christian symbols, like the Christmas tree and a number of other things, but they wanted to make sure that they also included, am I right, Jen Toby, that they also wanted to include the menorah and some of the symbols from Kwanzaa and everything else. So they wanted to make sure that all of the holidays were represented. So there are people that get upset when one holiday is overweight the other. Now, whether that is politically correct or not, that is up for debate. And to you, Sasha, I've said on this show before, and I'll say it again on this show now and everything, I personally do not feel that all Palestinians are of the same ilk and that they are all for the destruction, because I know some Palestinians that are actually more neutral in my mind and in my conversations with them. That might not be your experience, Sasha, but I have had experience with some that are more peaceful than you might think of the Palestinian culture in general. I will agree with you that the Hamas is strictly terrorist and that they need to be eradicated. That I will agree with you on and everything. But it's just my opinion based on conversations I've had with you and some of our leaders. We have some Durham leaders that are Palestinians.
Just to interject on that real quick, before you go, Sasha, I just wanted to say real quick, there was a cartoonist who actually did a whole it was a whole cartoon basically. That was the only way that he could get the interviews done that he did with the Palestinian people. and the Palestinian people gave their honest opinions. But he had to use the cartoons because had those Palestinian individuals been seen or been recognized, they would be killed by Hamas. So what that interview process was he did the interviews and posted the interviews out there with, the cartoons overlays, and actually did the comments, the commentary that Mark just gave, talking about how they felt about the Israeli people, how they felt about the war, how they felt about Hamas. And the vast majority did not want Hamas. The vast majority, they did the statistics. It was 70% wanted Hamas gone. They actually blame Hamas for what's going on now. They're upset about the deaths, and they wish Israel would talk more or do particular things, but they're not going to be heard. They're not going to be the people that are seen because of the fact of the way where they live, the community, and the place that they live. Because I'll see if I can grab that link again, because again, it was a great piece the individual was talking about, because it talked about, yes, they can't go south because they're bombs. They can't go north. They just want to see their families, but they're blaming Hamas, and they despise Hamas because that's what brought this on them, and they are okay with the Israeli people. So,
Jacoby, I'm ready to agree with your numbers. I'm not going to dispute that. All I wanted to say is this. There are about, at least before October 7th, there were about 50,000 Hamas fighters on 2.2 million Palestinians. Okay? Now, you let me know, during the Second World War, do you think that 100% of Germans supported Hitler? Absolutely not. The numbers, the real numbers, nobody knows really, and by now nobody really cares. What happened is that the Allies, United States, England, and Russia, they had to completely destroy Germany and run it right into capitulation. And that was the only way how they can make sure that there will be no more attacks by Hitler or others or whatever. Same thing can happen about any war. So in this situation with Hamas, by 2005, Israel left Gaza completely. General Sharon said, okay, now we are out, period. You can build second Singapore or whatever you're able to build. Good luck, do it. Well, by 2023, it hasn't happened. And if Hamas will be allowed to stay, that would mean that there will be further attacks once they consolidate it. Actually, Israel is now going much farther than Hamas. Now they are going to take care of Hezbollah. They already made a notice to Hezbollah that they have to retreat about 10 kilometers from the positions where they are now in next 2 days. If they're not going to do it, there will be repercussions. They already notified Libya about this, so they have to take it on notice. And let's face it, this. Now everybody is crying about Palestinians, they're being killed and whatever. Okay, I'm not going to go into the fact that Hamas is hiding behind Palestinians, and this is obviously increases the casualties among Palestinians. I'm not going to tell about this. But why nobody is crying about, for example, Uyghurs in China? They are also Muslim people who are being tortured by Chinese already for so many years. Nobody gives a damn. Nobody is crying about them. Why? Because it's a China. It's a great China who is doing that. What can you do against great China? But when little Israel is doing that, oh, that's the dirty Jews. They want to eliminate Hamas. They want to eliminate Palestinians. They want to do this and that. Come on. It's not going to help anybody at all.
Kim, thank you for the feedback. I'm going to do that. I've got to go. Thank you. Guys, have a great evening. I got to go to a city council meeting. I'm at City Hall. I'll be back next week for the full hour. Thank you so much. Have a great
Thank you
day.
for everything you
Appreciate
do,
you, Steve.
Steve.
I'll see
I
you later.
appreciate
I did
it.
see your hand up, Rick.
Thank
But just
you.
really quickly, Sasha, I will push back on you slightly
Rick's
because I
got
did
his
hear
hand up,
complaints
but
about the Chinese government and that attack on that part of the Muslim society. So there are people in the human rights community that have had that argument that you are having. So it is not being ignored, because I've even heard the media sources talking about it as well. So I would disagree with you on that. That's just my opinion. And
What is the result? They're talking and they're talking and even more talking. What is the result? Does China care about what this human rights or whoever is doing anything? They are toothless, impotent organizations. So why are we even talking about them?
All right. So after World War II, the U.S. occupied Japan with 1 million troops, occupied Germany with 1.5 million troops for 4 years. Somebody's going to need to occupy Gaza after this is over. 1% of Gazans nearly have been killed so far. 2/3 of dwellings in North Gaza have been obliterated. So they're going to need some kind of reasonable neutral government or occupying agency to rebuild. And with 1% of Gazans dead, there's going to be a lot of pissed off Gazans, and it's going to take a long time and a lot of rehab. We went in, we helped Germany rebuild, and somebody's going to need to do that.
But
back to Ukraine for a second.
Hasn't that been the case in just about any
agree.
country that there was war and turmoil? Because I know that we've even rebuilt some of the African nations, some of the Asian nations, and some of the others. So yes, that is one of the consequences of war, is that you have to go in there and you have to rebuild it. I imagine there's going to be some massive rebuilding properties, and I've even heard you talk about it, Sasha, around Ukraine, because at the end of the day, those cities are being leveled, and there's going to have to be some major rebuilding done in that country as well. And I do agree that your home country people are being incredibly brave in what they are facing. And I also agree, as you have said several times, that not everybody has that kind of fortitude, because it does take a certain kind of fortitude. So I will give your homemen and homeland people that credit for what they have done. But I do know that it takes a tremendous amount of rebuilding, no matter what the conflict is.
Right now, Russia controls 16% of Ukraine. So Ukraine's not in danger of immediately falling. But if concessions are made to Putin, Ukraine has 40 million people, but Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Finland, all these little countries only have a couple million people, and it's only their NATO membership that keeps, if Putin gets an appetite for conquest, those are teeny little bites for him to take if he's not stopped in Ukraine.
Rick, I would like to mention something very important, that all these insinuations that they are saved because they're members of NATO, that will be tested by Putin. Putin does not believe that if he will occupy Baltic states, for example, that NATO will invoke the Article number 5. Also, you have to understand how it works. I looked into it. It's not immediate fight against the invader, no. There will be on day number 1, the country which has been attacked, for example, by Russia, they have to defend themselves on their own. Only on second day, there will be consultations by NATO countries whether it was indeed unprovoked attack against from Russia, or it was an incident, or it was something else, and there will be discussions and consultations what to do about that. And Russia will say that, well, we will not really attack anybody. We are trying to protect Russian population in these countries, because in each of these countries there is a Russian population. So we want to protect them. We have nothing to do to attack Baltic states. We want to protect our own population. So they have to speak to Russia and so on. In the meantime, Russia will take over. The 3 Baltic states, their total population of less than 5 million people. They're tiny republics that will be taken over by Russia in a matter of probably day and a half, 2.5 days maximum.
No,
So,
you
then you will really understand what is the Article 5 of NATO. And if it will fail, then the Germany has to say goodbye, and France and everybody else. Only one country in Europe, it's England. England would be able to withstand Russian attack, no one else. For same reason how they could fight Germans, because it's an island country, and they would be able to withstand Russian attack. No one else.
Hey, just really quickly, and I'm going to pivot just slightly, but it's another political discussion. This one you're going to love as well, Sasha, because we only got 15 minutes going, and we actually alluded to it earlier in this conversation, or the conversation earlier in the World Edition, I believe it was. There's a lot of people that are feeling that there is a good possibility of Mr. Trump winning the next election, and part of that is because of a institution that I personally think is outdated, and I said it, me personally, I did not say anybody else on this panel feels that is outdated, and that is the Electoral College, because apparently right now the numbers are saying that Biden, like Hillary Clinton, got millions more votes nationwide than Trump, but Biden secured the White House by the thinnest of margins in the few key states that Clinton lost in 2016. And right now, if you're going by polls, and Rick, I know you're not the biggest fan of polls, but if you're going by polls, Georgia plus Michigan plus one more would be a Trump win. So he's really only got to swing 3 states to win the presidency again. And as Jacoby said earlier, that to me also is somewhat scary and all along those lines. But I'm just wondering, one, is the Electoral College outdated? And 2, can he win the Electoral College? Because it sounds to me like there are a lot of states that are in play. And if he's leading in Georgia and Michigan, and all he's got to do is flip maybe Florida or one of the other ones, that sounds like a Trump 2024 win. But I just wondered y'all's thoughts about, one, the legitimacy of the Electoral College, because even in Iowa, he looks strong, Trump is. And also, are you concerned about the number game? Because earlier me and Kim were talking about numbers, even with clickers and migrants and everything, but in the Electoral College, that is strictly a numbers game. So what is y'all's thoughts? Can he win the Electoral College election?
He sure can. The Muslims are less than 1% of the US population, but they are larger percentages of several swing states. And if they're pissed off at Biden because of Israel, that would raise the chance that Trump can win those states, even though Trump would be even worse for Muslims than Biden is. And yeah, the Electoral College is not fair, but I don't know how you make it go away. Like half the states' legislatures have signed statements saying they'd like it to go away, but the states that benefit from it, the small southern states, they don't want it to go away.
I would like to say that all these probabilities, which we had earlier discussion today on one of the shows, I think this is way too premature to do it now, because there are still a lot of time before election. Don't forget that what's happened, the economy in the United States is booming. Although everybody is saying, oh, I'm doing okay, I'm doing fine, the stock market is great, I'm doing so much money, but economy is horrible. A lot of people say that, and they don't understand that the only reason the stock market is booming and the economy is booming, the earnings are booming. Almost all companies, with the exception of very few, like yesterday, Adobe fell 20 some percentages, because no, their earnings were great. They actually made a lot of money, but their predictions for 24 were not that great, and that's why the stock tanked, actually, not because earnings were good. So what I would say is that interest rates are at the peak. From this point on, they can go only down. There's no other way. And they will go down whether the Federal Reserve want it or not, simply because to service debt on $34 trillion, it takes $1 trillion just to service the interest rates. So if it will go down substantially, so it will be required only half of that, maybe say $500 billion to service. So that's already, it gives you present of $500 billion. That's not so bad. So when this will start going that way in the next 3-6 months, that will definitely improve everybody's financial situation, and then Biden wouldn't look so bad. No, about Trump, there's something scary. Forget about all the lawsuits and so on. It's unclear whether the lawsuits would be even allowed to happen before the election, because of the Supreme Court is now looking whether he can be found guilty at all. But that doesn't matter. I'm not paying much attention to that. He is now a subject of a horrible mental decline, which he is still doing all those rallies and speeches and so on. But whenever he's one-on-one with the reporters and he has to answer questions, first of all, most of the questions he doesn't understand, so he cannot answer something what he doesn't understand. Now, even if he doesn't understand the question, his reply could be anything. It's one reply. Now, asks the same question 3.5 minutes later, it will be different reply. He is not consistent. I think he is. The age, unfortunately, is doing a cruel thing to him. Much more to Biden, although Biden is a couple of years older, but it affects Trump much bigger way.
To Toby and then to Rick.
Sasha is spot on with how this is way too early to begin panicking. It is, we can open our eyes and see, ways to manipulate. Not really manipulate. Well, yeah, I guess manipulate, because that's all really politics is now, is just manipulating the message to make sure you're able to understand what is good and what is bad. Because Biden truthfully has a great record to run on. It's just right now the message itself is muddled because of the idea that Biden is too old and too feeble. So somehow next year, that's when we have to start, I guess, trying to show other things that the man does rather than just walking to a podium, because that's what the media covers right now, is they're saying that, they show that image, and that image of, him walking across. Yeah, he looks old. He's an old guy. He's 80 years old. But again, next year, Sasha's spot on. Once next year hits and the actual campaign on both sides really happens, where yes, Trump, when he's out campaigning right now, people aren't listening to how much he's slurring his words and doing all these crazy things. All they're showing is him waving his arm, because that looks like strength. Him over talking people, not understanding the question, just like Sasha says, but people don't clue into these extra little bitty things that Trump really looks horrible. Even if his policies were decent, he sounds bad. And the things that he's confused at where he is in terms of states and says different. Yeah, he's in as much mental decline as they want to say Biden is. A lot of what they're saying is projection, but it's sticking because the Republican Party, the great thing that they do is messaging. And when they pump out that message, it sticks. Like how Rick pointed out, how Muslims are leaving Biden and are willing to vote for Trump or willing to vote for the Republican Party, even though the Republican Party is worse. All the Republican Party is doing is hammering Biden that he is horrible for Muslims. He's just, and it's just a messaging thing right now. So next year is when things kick in, because I mean, the court cases that are coming, not in terms of Trump's, but you have, again, the abortion case. You have stuff that's just going to hit next year, and then we can really see where everything is.
Rick, and
Yeah,
then
I want to add something about somebody being too old to be able to be mentally capable of managing our country. I recently have been introduced to East Bank Club here in Chicago, which was founded by someone who is 96 years old right now, and he still runs. It is the world's largest, or one of the top 3 largest country club gyms. He started it a long time ago as, just tennis courts here, and it's literally the largest. In fact, they're getting ready to put a grocery store in there. This man not only is doing that, he's wrapping up a project of building a high rise. And when he comes into a meeting, he is the most clear-minded, person you've ever met. Not only clear-minded, he can out strategy, outthink, and think ahead of so many people. So don't think just because somebody walks slowly, maybe with a little hunch or a shuffle, maybe trips a little, don't think that they cannot sit in that chair and outmaneuver and think everyone else in this world, because that man that is here in Chicago can outdo anyone that I have ever met in business. He is amazing.
Completely
Before I
agree.
continue,
All
Rick,
right. As
unfortunately,
Jacoby says, that right now the majority of voters aren't paying much attention,
No, they're not.
and when they start paying attention, then they might notice that Trump has been saying a bunch of crazy stuff. I would like to see somebody do an analysis to quantify how much his statements are decaying, because each side says the other side is senile. But you could do an analysis. There are tools to see whether somebody has Alzheimer's, comparing what they say now to what they said 2 years ago or 4 years ago. You could easily do it to Trump because he's left such a record. And somebody needs to do that. And were they to do it and show that he really is declining, that would be great messaging, to apply percentages to it and string all his mistakes together. I mean, the Republicans do it every time Biden stutters. They cut the stutters together to make it look like he's not there.
yeah.
I would like to mention something that only messages that I've heard from Trump lately, a year ago, 3 years ago, or 3 days ago, election was stolen. And number two, let's make America great again. And that's what he's talking for the last 8 years about it. And no, not 8 years, because election was stolen later on. But interestingly enough, I saw yesterday and day before yesterday, the interviews on CNN, 1 hour each, one with Ron DeSantis and another one, Vivek, what's his name,
Ramaswamy.
Okay, whatever. And well, this is the Vivek. It's a complete. I don't want to waste my time to describe what he is, but you know what he is without my help. And I saw it. He's just obnoxious prick. That's all what he is. Now,
He's young Trump. He's Trump minus 40 years.
Well, in some ways, he's much worse than Trump, because Trump did some stupid things in his life, like Trump University, Trump Airlines, and the magazines, and so on. So it's a little man stuff. What Vivek did, much more sophisticated. He was able to buy for next to nothing 4 patents from English company, and all those four patents, they had trials of some drug. I don't remember what it is, and all 4 trials failed. So he bought it for next to nothing because nobody needed it, created public company, raised value to $4 billion, and then he had the 5th trial, which failed, of course. Why 4 trials failed, so the 5th one also. So many investors lost his money and so on. Of course, he didn't invest even 1 penny of his own money. Okay, so that's what kind of man he is, but it doesn't matter. Now, Ron DeSantis, on the other hand, the day before yesterday, on CNN, he looked quite good. He looked much better than the debates, which I was also watching. But this interview, he was quite good. And I tell you that I was surprised when today we were looking at odds of the election. I was shocked that Nikki Haley has 10%. So she's not too much, well, she's behind Biden and Trump, but not that much. Now the DeSantis has only 1.25%. So I was shocked to see that according to bookmakers, they are evaluating the chances of Nikki Haley almost 10 times better than DeSantis. So maybe next week there will be an interview with Nikki Haley and Chris Christie. We'll see to that. So this was quite surprising.
Yeah,
I
no,
know that.
one second, Rick, we're getting ready to wind up, but we can go a little bit over. I was just going to say a couple of things. One, to your point, Kim, unfortunately, corporations sometimes get caught up in that. I think I mentioned it on this show and several others that mom, who is now in her 80s, was pretty much forced out of a bank board retirement when she was 65 and still very fluid, and she's still very cognizant and fluid even to this day and everything because of these ageism rules that exist and everything. Because they had a rule that once you turned a certain age, I think it might have been actually closer to 65 or 70, that you had to be out. And I think that it ought to be based on what you just said, what you can do, and not necessarily your age and all along those lines. The other thing, to your point, Sasha, is that something that frustrates me and everything is that sometimes when we go after a big fish, the other fish get caught up in it as well, because there is what Trump University is. Trump University deserved to go down. That was a scam if ever there was one. But as Kim can tell you, there are schools like Living Arts that is here in Raleigh that fall in that same kind of category, but they were caught up in that same kind of ruling, and they are going under as well, even though they were a legitimate private public kind of school, but they got caught up in that Trump mess and everything. So unfortunately, that's what happens sometimes when you go after big fish. So, I mean, not just Toby, Rick.
I'm pretty much run out of stuff to say, except that I would like somebody to put Biden on supplementary testosterone so he walks a little bit more peppily.
Yep.
You just want him to have some
And
Chuck
I'd
nuts.
also like to send out good health wishes to Adam. That's why he's not with us tonight. He's not feeling well. So Adam, just because we're thinking of you, we're going to send some good wishes to Putin that maybe he will reconsider his war and step down. So everyone, have a wonderful holiday season. Don't forget to, try to find something that makes you happy and share with other people. And let's put some positive vibes out there that maybe some of these wars will start reeling in. Until then, we'll see you next Tuesday. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
We'll be on World Edition as well. But right now, like you said, we're getting out of here.
Good night.